Camtree DSLR shoulder rig. Now all the parts for this shoulder rig come in two big waterproof, airproof cases. I found that they were fairly well built and I wouldn't have a problem taking them around, smashing them around the boot of my car, which I've done for a couple of weeks, and you can put padlocks on them, which is nice. All in all, great. Now for the sake of it, we'll just open one of these up. As you can see, the latches are nice and solid, takes a bit of effort to get them open. You have padding on the top, custom cut padding for all your bits inside. You have a waterproof seal, airproof seal too, which I found when it arrived from the plane. I'd say the build quality is great. Now if you look here, you can see it's not that crappy sort of disintegrating foam that you get with a lot of cases. I thought the foam in this was really nice. Here you can see that waterproof seal as well. Okay, so in this first case you can see we have our mat box, we have a bunch of power leads and cables. You can see some of the barn doors. You can of course see the follow focus, and you can see that the foam that they've cut it in is quite nice and solid. And so here in your second case, you can see on top you have your attachable handles, and they're very, very adjustable. And you have also your assorted sizes of 15mm rods. So once you take that layer off, you have more stuff. Hooray! And I'll go over that in more detail in a minute. So all in all, in terms of the padding, packing, protection, I'd say Camtree has done a really great job with this. I don't really have any concerns of anything breaking while it's in the padding. So the first thing we're going to be having a look at right now is of course our mat box. Now on their website, Camtree says that this is made out of carbon fibre and the attachment to the rails is made of aluminium. I'd believe them. It's quite solid, it feels great, and if I dropped it I wouldn't be afraid of breaking it. The thing that surprised me most is when I looked at it, originally you think you're going to get something a bit half-assed, but I was very, very happy with it, and I have dropped it several times and it hasn't had even a scratch. So another thing worth noting about this mat box is you have two 4x4 glass filter holders. Here you can see that there's a nice square one. Fit all your square glass filters in there. I didn't actually have any of my filters with me at the time, but I can assure you they do fit in quite snugly, and I was never afraid of them dropping out and breaking, especially when you're dealing with like a nice $200 Tiffin filter. Now along with your normal vertical filter, you also have a rotating filter. Hooray! And you can go pretty much a full 90 degrees in either direction with this, and it sits there nice and solidly. It's not clicked or anything, but it doesn't rotate when you don't want it to. Another thing you have is your attachment to the rails here. You have a nice lever to tighten and adjust, and the great thing is that your mat box can also swing away, which is really handy, especially when you're needing to change lenses. The attachment is good and solid. It doesn't feel like it's going to break, which is nice. And you do have a couple of smaller holes on the side of it that you can attach other things to. Here you can see that there's a rotating circular plastic thing, and you can chuck, if you really feel like it, that thing that I can never remember the name of. As you can see, I did end up finally getting the bastard on. Yeah, again, I didn't think that I was going to break at any time. It seemed to be decent enough build quality, and it does exactly what it's meant to. Pops off real easy too. Hooray! Another thing that Camtree chucks in there is you have this nice little bag of foam stoppers. I have never really used them, but you have them in plenty of assorted sizes. Basically just to stop more light than you want getting through. I could never really figure out what the solid one was for, but each their own. And yeah, they fit in there quite nicely and never seem to fall out. So here we have all three barn doors attached. I mean, in all honesty, I rarely use the barn doors on this mat box. People kind of realise that one of the most important features of actually having a mat box is to represent that you are filming. When people see it, they go, oh, and they will attempt to act naturally in front of your camera instead of going, oh, is he taking a photo, and sort of smile and pose. Yeah, I mean, if you really have to control light that much, I don't know, if you're stuck outdoors on a super bright day and you don't have any ND filters around go for it. But apart from that, I've never really used the barn doors. And here's what you've all really been waiting for: follow focus. The Camtree solid gear follow focus. As the name implies, it is quite solid. It feels nice and smooth, but at the same time it has a nice sort of pull to it. Yeah. As you can see on the bottom here, you loosen this and you can slide it away from your rails, which is really helpful when you're trying to put on a new lens. As you can see, I'll bug it up there a little bit. But when you loosen that side gear, it clicks onto your rails, clicks nice and solidly, and then when you screw it back on, you have no fear that it's going to fall off, which is nice. The tightness and weight of the gear itself is adjustable. You can tighten it up to be quite slow if you're trying to do a long, slow pull, or you can loosen it to do really fast ones. So what else do you get? You get a speed crank, and you also get one lens gear attachment. Speed crank reminds me of the Simpsons episode where Homer gets a speed cocker for his gun, and I had the same reaction. It does exactly the same thing, slots into the side of your follow focus, pops in and out really easily, and does exactly what it's meant to do: crank the speed. Now your lens gear attachment, as you can see with my magic drain pipe here, you simply chuck it around the focus ring of the lens. You've got to get it nice and tight. You tighten up the little screw, and then you have a working geared lens. Slides around really nicely. You make sure you do it so you don't have the dangly bit next to your gear, obviously, but once it's on nice and tight, it works great with the follow focus. And the last thing you have in this case are your accessories. You have Allen keys, you have some power leads up the back, and you have some screw mounts for your camera. So on to the next case, and here we have again, you have your rods. So these are your shorter ones, which you use for attaching the Anton Bauer battery mount to the back of your rig. Nice and solid, made of aluminium. They have little plugs in the end with a C for Camtree, which is cute. You have your slightly longer ones. I can't remember the exact measurements, but have a look on the Camtree website. Again, they're aluminium. I've dropped them plenty of times, scratched them plenty of times, but they haven't gone out of shape. And your longer ones, which you use for attaching your follow focus, your matte box, and everything to the front of your rig. Nice and lightweight, but nice and solid too. Now you have the handles, and these handles are fantastic. One of the nicest things I found, of course, are the rubber handle grips. They're not the crappy ones that'll disintegrate after a week. They're nice and solid and firm. As you can see, all the brackets and clamps on this handlebar set are made of metal, which is nice and reassuring. And the clamps actually do together nice and tightly, so once you adjust them to different positions, you don't feel like they're going to just slip out on you and you're going to drop everything. And you also have plenty of little attachments for 1/4 and 3/8 mounts. As you can see on the top, you have the possibility to attach two different sizes of rods. I think that's your 15mm and your 19mm or something. I don't have the larger size, so I never really bother. You have 3-way adjustability for all of these clamp bits, which is nice. And again, they feel really nice and solid. They don't feel like they're sort of grinding away the more I use them either, which is nice. The screw bits are nice and solid. Again, they don't feel like they're just going to pop off the end. And I think if they actually do, what is handy is you can use the Allen keys that come with the case and simply tighten them like that. So if you break the plastic bits, it's not the end of the world, and you don't have to go running back to the shop or whoever you bought them from to get more, which is really handy. So as you can see on the side, in those little screw bits, you can see the Allen key holes, which is great, and you can also see these mounts on the side. You could even mount a microphone on the front of your handlebars if you really wanted to. So here's the real meaty part of your rig. This is the actual shoulder mount. As you can see, so many attachments, which is fantastic. So you flip it over, you can see the padded part which goes on your shoulder. You can move that back and forward, which is nice. At the end you see the attachment point for your batteries, and at the front you have a Sony V-mount tripod attachment. So as you have a look here, you can see your quick release plate. You can actually attach different sizes of threaded screws to that, so if you have a camera with a bigger one, you can change it. You have a spot at the top that stops it from falling off, and you have this little latch here that stops it unintentionally falling off the back. The plate itself probably isn't really anything to write home about, but again, you can attach different size screws to it, which is handy. The bracket, well yeah, as you can see, it's reversible as well, which is handy, I suppose. The little bracket itself is spring loaded with that little screw, which means even if you don't have it in there as tight as you can, it feels solid enough, but you really do want to tighten it right up. And once you do, it'll feel nice and solid, and it's definitely not going to fall out, and your camera feels safe. And once you go to the back or the front or whichever end it is, I can never remember without setting it up, you have these little screws, which is where you attach your rods. They are, again, nice and solid, and if they break, you can use Allen keys to tighten it. This little part here, once you adjust those Allen key screws there, you can actually raise or lower the height of your rails, which is nice and handy, nice and modular. So just quickly, I'm just going to chuck one of my rods in there. They fit in nice and tight, and once you've tightened the screws, they actually stay straight, which is really handy. If it went to the side or slightly inwards, it would just basically crap up your entire rig. Now again, just down the end here, you can see your tripod mount. You have your different size threads. I've attached it to a Miller tripod, a DS10, and it didn't feel like it's going to fall off. And again, just on the side, you can see more attachments for more things, because you always need more things. Battery mount, woo! I don't have the right type of battery to use this, so I've never used it, to be honest. What I can do, however, is comment on the build quality in general, and in general it is good. Switches switch. Latches latch, and buttons button. On the side here you can see all your outputs for different type of power using those cables I mentioned beforehand. Again, I've never used this, so I can't comment on how good it is, but it's all there. Again, on the back you can see your little labels for where your power outputs are, and this brings us to the only sad part of this review. My little handles are cracked. They actually came like this from the factory. Yeah, kind of broken and comes right off, which isn't great. But again, you can just adjust these with the Allen keys if you need to. Still, it's a bit sad, but in general, I don't think that's very representative of this rig's quality. I think it's far better than this. Now you have all these other pieces which are for different parts of the shoulder mount, but instead of like reading through them, I'm just going to say they have lots of mounts, and I'm just going to set up the rig now to show you. So here you are, this is my shoulder rig in all its glory, and this is set up as how I would use it most of the time, without the battery mount. You can also see the cage is fairly solid and it fits together really nicely. Again, I can only emphasize the quality here. Everything that can be metal is metal, which is reassuring. Plus it's a very modular design and you can attach a lot of things to it, such as a monitor for example. Here you have a very short example of how to use this poorly. As you can see, the follow focus works nicely. This is just using a 50mm non-stabilized lens, just the Canon 1.8 version 2. And this is holding it with one hand because you do need one hand to use follow focus. One thing that would have been really handy is if Camtree had chucked in an arm that I could use to attach my monitor with, because it can be really awkward trying to look at the little screen if your camera has an attachable screen with it. But again, at the same time, you need to analyze why you want a shoulder mount. If you're just wanting steady shots, get a tripod. But if you're wanting to do really action-orientated shots where you're walking around, running around following people, then you should consider getting a gimbal. But for doing nice following movement shots, and if you have a nicely lit set of course, it can be nice to stop down and just follow your actors around. I think this shoulder rig really gives you the versatility to do that. So I mean, if I had to give this a score out of 10, I'd be looking at an 8 or a 9 definitely. Again, there were just a few little problems like those, the broken little handles and the colouring in over the scratches on the barn doors. But all in all, I'd have to say I'm really happy with the quality of the shoulder rig, and if you're looking to get one, I'd say this is the one to go for, and I would buy stuff from Camtree again based on the quality I've seen here. So as a worst case scenario, what if your boss told you, I want you to go outside with this 80 to 200 non-image stabilized lens in pretty much pitch black, shoot at ISO 6400.